discuss T cell lymphomas. This will be the last class on the lymphomas, the Harrison-based issue. So, firstly, we'll read about the WHO classification of the mature T cell lymphomas. Okay, the WHO classifies these mature T cell lymphomas into those with a leukemic presentation, those with a nodal presentation, and those with a extranodal presentation. Leukemic means that involves the bone marrow and then comes into the peripheral blood as well. Nodal means involving the lymph nodes, and extranodal means other sites apart from lymph nodes like GI tract, brain, skin, testes, etc. Okay, so coming to the leukemic variant, the first one is T cell PLL. Amongst T cell NHLs, you will get only one or two questions, but it is a big topic. Okay. But you do not know, you cannot predict which kind of questions you get. So we have to read the whole topic, but I have tried to simplify it as much as possible. Okay. So in the leukemic variants, the first one is TPLL, T cell pro-lymphocytic leukemia. The second one we'll read is TLGL, T cell large granular lymphocytic leukemia. Then the fourth one which we'll read is aggressive NK cell leukemia. And the next one is adult T cell leukemia, also called as ATLL, and it is very commonly associated with the virus HTLV, human T cell lymphotrophic virus. Okay, so not only the full name, you should know the mnemonic also for these lymphomas, because sometimes in the MCQ questions, they will not give the full name and they will refer to the lymphoma as TPLL or TLGL, etc. Okay, these were the leukemic variants. Majorly, you should know about these four. Then coming to the nodal type of lymphomas. Amongst nodal, there is ALCL. What is ALCL? Anaplastic large T cell lymphoma. It can be either ALK positive or it can be ALK negative. I'll tell you what this is when we read about these specific lymphomas. Then comes AITL. AITL. What does AITL mean? What is AITL? Okay.
Angioimmunoblastic.
Yes, angioimmunoblastic T cell lymphoma. Then rarely these follicular T cell lymphoma, etc. But majorly you should know PTCL NOS. So in the nodal, we should know anaplastic large cell lymphoma, angioimmunoblastic T cell lymphoma, and peripheral T cell lymphomas not otherwise specified. Which amongst, okay, I'll ask you later. Then amongst extranodal, we should know extranodal NK T cell lymphoma nasal type. You must have seen so many MCQs in which they show that there is a perforation in the hard palate, there is a nasal mass, and then they'll ask you which lymphoma is it associated with. Your answer is extranodal NK T cell lymphoma. And then they'll ask you which kind of virus it is associated with. Your answer is
EBV.
EBV. Yeah. This is a very common MCQ which is asked. Okay. Then the other ones are enteropathy associated T cell lymphoma, hepatosplenic T cell lymphoma, and subcutaneous panniculitis. Subcutaneous panniculitis. Okay. Then there is another classification in which they have included only the cutaneous lymphomas, in which the majority are mycosis fungoides. Then there are the names of other ones like CD30 positive, CD4 positive, CD8 positive, gamma delta type of primary cutaneous lymphomas. Okay. But you should know a few lines about mycosis fungoides, Cecily. So this table or this slide tells us that there are many T cell lymphomas, but which is the most common amongst all of these and which is the least common? So, peripheral T cell lymphoma, not otherwise specified. That is, PTCL-NOS is the most common T cell lymphoma. Okay, if they ask you the second most common, it is anaplastic large cell lymphoma. That was ALCL. Okay, others are angioimmunoblastic, extranodal panniculitis, etc. But the most common is PTCL-NOS. The second most common is anaplastic. Okay. Now, we'll read about these lymphomas one by one. First, we'll read about the leukemic type of mature T cell lymphomas, the first of which was TPLL, that is T cell pro-lymphocytic leukemia. The median age is mostly for all the lymphomas, T or B is 60 years until and unless you are specifically told. Okay, so median age is 60 years. What is important to know? As we know, it is a leukemic variant. Thus, the patient can present with hyperleukocytosis, with organomegaly. Okay, the patient can have skin involvement, serous effusions, etc. Then the immunophenotype is CD markers, CD2, CD5, and CD52 positive. This you should remember, CD2, CD5, and CD52. Very easy to remember, right? CD5, CD2, CD52 positive. Why is this immunophenotype important? Because there is a monoclonal antibody against CD52. Do you know the name? Yeah, alemtuzumab, which can be given in this highly poor prognostic lymphoma. Okay, so what is important to know is that this TPLL, it will present like a leukemic variant, thus just like ALL, it will have leukocytosis, organomegaly, fusions, etc. Then what is important to know is the immunophenotype. It can be 2,552 positive. And then what is there in the histopathology is when you see at these T cells in a slide, what you see is cytoplasmic blebbing. Okay, so cytoplasmic blebs are commonly seen in this type of PTLL. Treatment, as I told you, single agent alemtuzumab. Otherwise, you can do transplant, you can give pentostatin, etc. But you have to remember alemtuzumab. Okay. Now coming to the next lymphoma, that is T large granular lymphoma, TLGL. As the name suggests, what kind of cells will be there in this? Large granular lymphocytes. Okay, so what markers are positive in this TLGL? These are mostly CD8 positive kind of cells with usually CD4 negative. Otherwise, other T cell markers like CD3, etc. can be positive. Okay, and another thing which we should remember is that it is commonly associated with autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and AIHA. In the clinical features, these patients can present with neutropenia along with anemia. So neutropenia is a very important CBC finding in a case of T cell large granular lymphoma. Okay, then these are the large granular lymphocytes which have abundant cytoplasm. They are large cells which host eosinophilic granules. Okay, so when do you treat this TLGL? All patients of TLGL do not require treatment. Indications are if the patient has severe neutropenia, if the patient has severe anemia, if the patient has associated autoimmune manifestations. What is the treatment like? As in autoimmune diseases, we have to give immunosuppressive therapy. So, methotrexate, cyclophosphamide, cyclosporin. Okay. So, I'll revise TLGL again. In TLGL, we have to remember that it is a slow-growing, indolent kind of a lymphoma, mostly CD8 positive. Then it is associated with autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and autoimmune hemolytic anemia. In the CDC, we find characteristically neutropenia along with anemia. That is why, because of all these cytopenias, it's a close differential of aplastic anemia. Okay, a close DD of TLGL is aplastic anemia. Then, what is the treatment of what patients require treatment if they are severely neutropenic, if they are severely anemic, and if they have autoimmune manifestations? These patients require treatment. What is the treatment? Mainly immunosuppressive therapy like methotrexate, cyclophosphamide, and cyclosporin. Okay. Now coming to the next leukemia type of TNHL, adult T-cell leukemia lymphoma, ATLL. This we have already read that it is commonly associated with HTLV1 virus. Okay. Then we should know it mainly infects the CD4 positive T cells. And it is very common in Caribbean. It is very common in Japan. Okay, age group is same, 60 years, male. Then what is a very characteristic lab finding in ATLL is hypercalcemia. In which other malignancy can we see hypercalcemia very commonly? Sorry? Myeloma.
Myeloma.
Yes, myeloma. Okay. Then its
Multiple
clinical variant. Yes. Then its clinical variants, as it is a leukemic variant, it can present with increased counts, lymphadenopathy, hepatosplenomegaly, and it can also have lytic lesions. Okay. And one more thing very commonly associated with this is that it can be very commonly associated with strongyloid stercoralis infection. Okay, it is very commonly associated with various opportunistic infections. Questions has been asked on strongyloid stercoralis apart from this pneumocystis, herpes, and it is affecting the CD4 positive T cells. Okay, so in ATLL we have to remember HTLV, CD4 positive T cells, common in Japan, associated with hypercalcemia. Acute leukemia-like presentation can have lytic lesions and associated with opportunistic infections like strongyloid stercoralis. And what is the common question is that what this appearance is commonly associated with which kind of lymphoma? This is called as a flower-like. This is a flower-like. This is a flower-like or a clover leaf-like appearance because of the convoluted nucleus, and this appearance is commonly associated with lymphocytic leukemia, ATLL. Okay, this picture shows the lytic lesions in ATLL. And what is the treatment? The treatment is if the patient has very acute symptoms, and the patient can have lymphoma-like presentation. Mostly they have poor survivals. Mostly these patients have poor survivals. And what kind of therapy we can give to the patient? If the patient is elderly, we can give CHOP-like therapy to the patient. Some people say that as it is associated with HTLV, we can give antiviral therapy in the form of interferon to the patient. Then there is a protocol. You do not need to remember the names of the drugs. You should just know that it is called as the LSG-15 protocol. It is known as, this is not a very common question and this is not very important to be remembered, but just for the sake of it, LSG-15 protocol. And a drug which can be given, a monoclonal antibody which can be given in the treatment of ATLL is called as mogamulizumab. That is the defucosylated humanized anti-CCR4. Anti-CCR4. Okay, anti-CCR4. And what is this associated with which CD marker? It is associated with CD25. Okay, here we write now. CD25. So it is associated with CD25. So we have to remember just that in the elderly, we can give CHOP-like therapy. We can give antiviral therapy in the form of interferon, and anti-CCR4 mogamulizumab is a monoclonal antibody which can be given. And there is one protocol named as LSG-15 protocol, which can be given with or without this mogamulizumab. Okay. Any questions till now?
Ma'am, in this, do we treat only acute phase or every patient?
Sorry, I didn't get you.
In this last treatment protocol, is it only for acute patient ATLL or all patients, smoldering and chronic?
This is majorly for the acute patients. Okay, in the smoldering also they say you can give this therapy. Basically, the prognosis is not very good for any of these. Okay, for acute patients also, lymphoma like also, but this treatment is mainly for the acute patients. The smoldering type of patients are usually asymptomatic. They only have skin involvement and sometimes lung involvement, and they mostly do not require treatment. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
In these kind of T-cell lymphomas, usually you are not asked the treatment. What they'll ask you is the histopathology finding. What they'll ask you is what kind of CD markers they are associated with, what kind of virus they are commonly associated with, any specific lab finding associated with that lymphoma. Okay. If there is some important treatment associated with the lymphoma, I'll definitely tell you. Okay. Now coming to the next group of mature T-cell lymphomas, that is the nodal ones, in which we'll mainly read about the anaplastic large cell lymphoma. We'll read about angioimmunoblastic and PTCL-NOS. So coming to the anaplastic large cell lymphoma. This anaplastic large cell lymphoma is majorly of 4 types: ALK positive, ALK negative, breast implant associated, and primary cutaneous. Okay, and primary cutaneous. What is important in ALCL to note is that its age distribution is same as Hodgkin's. It has a bimodal age distribution. So it is present in children and AYA age group, and 60 years of age is the second peak. So it can be seen in children and adolescents and young adults, or it can be seen in elderly. Okay, so this is important that it has a bimodal age distribution, then it has 4 subtypes. Okay, so what is ALK? ALK is anaplastic lymphoma kinase. It is present on chromosome 2 associated with translocation 2-5. Okay, associated with translocation 2-5. Then what is very important to know is the flow markers or immunophenotype markers of anaplastic large cell lymphoma. So important flow marker of anaplastic large cell lymphoma is CD30. So these patients, they say, have universal expression of CD30, which is also called as KI1. Okay, and where does this expression occur inside the cell? It occurs in the membrane and the Golgi apparatus. So this has been asked as a MCQ. Okay, that in which part of the cell does CD30 expression occur in an anaplastic large cell lymphoma? Okay, so your answer is that the CD30 or KI1 expression occurs in the membrane and the Golgi apparatus of the cell. Or we have to remember one thing, that all these are T-cell lymphomas. That is why they will lack the B-cell markers. Okay, then some of these cells in anaplastic large cell lymphoma are null cell type. What does that mean? That the tumor cell does not express the B cell, but it does not express the T lineage markers as well. It is missing both the T and the B lineage marker. It is called as a null cell type. Okay. So What kind of cells can we see classically in a case of anaplastic large cell lymphoma? These are called as the hallmark cells. Hallmark cells look like they are large cells which have a horseshoe-shaped nucleus along with a perinuclear hoof. I'll show you this. They have a horseshoe-shaped nucleus along with, this is the perinuclear hoof. A horseshoe-shaped nucleus along with the perinuclear hoof. You got it? So hallmark cells are seen in which kind of a lymphoma? They are seen in a anaplastic large cell lymphoma. Okay. Anaplastic large cell lymphoma. Amongst the 4 variants in anaplastic large cell lymphoma, the most common one is the ALK positive one. Okay. Now coming to the ALK negative anaplastic large cell lymphoma, a recent classification subdividing this ALK negative ALCL has come up recently. That is why questions can be asked on this. Usually earlier what they used to say that if I do a ALK on an anaplastic large cell lymphoma, if the patient is ALK positive, he has a good prognosis. If a patient is ALK negative, the patient will have a poor prognosis. But this subclassification of ALK negative has changed the scenario. How? I'll tell you. So the ALK negative are further divided into 3. Okay. This is, one is DUSP, DUS20. You do not need to know the full form. You should just know DUS22 positive. They are 30% of all ALK negative. Then there is TP63. Just like TP53, this is TP63. And the third one is hyperactivation of STAT3. So why this subclassification? Because they say that the ALK negative ALCL, which carry this DUS22, has a prognosis as good as ALK positive one. That is why it is important. Okay, it also carries the hallmark cells, but the translocation in this, maybe this is not very important, is 6-7 instead of 2-5, and they carry a good prognosis. Okay, so they carry DUS22, dual specificity phosphatase 22. They are 30% of all ALK negative ALCL, and they carry a good prognosis. They carry hallmark cells. Translocation 6-7 is present. Okay, TP63 have a very poor prognosis. Hyperactivation of STAT3 have a poor prognosis. That is why this subclassification is important. They can ask you which of these carries a poor prognosis. Okay, they'll give you ALK positive ALCL, ALK negative ALCL. In ALK negative, instead of giving ALK negative, they will give you DUS22 positive ALK negative ALCL, TP63 ALCL. So you should know that DUS22 plus ALK positive ALCL both carry a good prognosis. This is important. Okay. So this shows us 5-year survivals of ALK positive are similar to DUS22. Other which are DUS negative carry a poor prognosis. TP60, this is not 50, this is 63, carry a very, very poor prognosis. 5-year survivals of only 20%. How does ALCL present? It has a bimodal distribution. So just like Hodgkin's, it presents with a peripheral lymphadenopathy most of the times. B symptoms can be there. It is usually stage 3 and 4, high LDH, extranodal involvement of skin, bone, liver, lungs can take place. Performance status of the child or the adult is usually poor. So it is a nodal type of ALCL. You should know the main site involved will be nodes. There will be symptoms, high stage, LDH high, extranodal involvement, poor performance status. So what is the treatment like? In CD, for the treatment, what do? We divide these ALCL as CD30 positive and CD30 negative. Okay. So why is this division important? Why is the CD30 important? Do we have a drug against it?
Yes, ma'am.
What is the drug? Brentuximab vedotin. That is why this CD30 is important. In this, you have to remember one funda, okay? That ALCL can be, as per like lab criteria, is ALK positive or ALK negative. Okay, but for the treatment, it is either CD30 positive or CD30 negative. ALK positive, ALK negative, mostly all are CD30 positive. I told you, no, usually CD30 is universally expressed in ALCL. So irrespective of the ALK status, CD30 can be positive in most of the anaplastic large cell lymphomas. Okay, so don't confuse with ALK. In the treatment, what is important to know is CD30 positive and CD30 negativity. So if the patient is CD30 positive, then our treatment is, the usual treatment for most of the lymphomas is CHOP. Why aren't we giving rituximab in this patient? We can give rituximab also. Why have I missed rituximab? What have I done? Rituximab is anti-CD20. It is a B cell marker. It will be absent in a T cell lymphoma. That is why no rituximab. Okay, we just give CHOP without rituximab. T cell lymphomas will not have B cell markers, no. So it will be CD20 negative. No point in giving rituximab. So what do we do in this CHOP in CD30 positive patient? That instead of giving Oncovin or Vincristine, we add brentuximab vedotin with this CHP therapy. So cyclophosphamide, anthracycline, prednisolone along with brentuximab vedotin. The dose is 1.8 mg per kg intravenously on day 1 of each cycle. You should know the name of the trial. It was the Echelon trial, just the name of the trial. For brentuximab, which trial? Echelon trial. Okay, just this. And what kind of toxicity it can cause? It can cause just like vincristine. What toxicity it can cause? Just like vincristine. What is a common? Yes, so brentuximab can also cause peripheral neuropathy. It can cause neutropenia, it can cause diarrhea, but you should remember that it can cause peripheral neuropathy. Okay, and if the patient is CD30 negative, I don't have any other choice, I give CHOP. Okay, sometimes what I do to modify, I add etoposide to this CHOP therapy. Okay, so CD30 negative means less than 10% cells express CD30 by immunohistochemistry. Okay, so this is what is important. What happens further is in this treatment is that once I have given 6 cycles of CHOP or 6 cycles of brentuximab with CHP, if the patient is in sorry, are the slides visible?
Yes.
Are the slides visible? Yes. So in this, you have to remember this funda that we have to give 6 cycles of chemotherapy to the patient. Sometimes they say if the patient is stage 1 or 2, that is only one site of lymph nodes is involved or 2 contiguous sites are involved, just like Hodgkin's, we can give radiotherapy to the local site after giving 6 cycles of chemotherapy. Okay, and what do they say is if the patient, just like other lymphomas, these patients also have just that similar Apple score. Okay, international prognostic score. If the international prognostic score is high after giving 6 cycles, if the patient is in remission, we can take the patient for autologous hematopoietic stem cell transplant. So otherwise, autologous hematopoietic stem cell transplant has to be done in a relapsed refractory setting. Okay. In a relapsed refractory setting, we have to do a autologous hematopoietic stem cell transplant. If a patient relapses on autologous transplant, we do a allogenic transplant. Then they can ask you, are there some specific ALK inhibitors for ALK positive ALCL? You should know that crizotinib is a ALK inhibitor. Okay, crizotinib is a ALK inhibitor. The rest of the treatment is same like other lymphomas. You give DAP, ICE-based therapy, and you transplant the patient. Autologous hematopoietic stem cell transplant. Then breast implant associated ALCL is the third variant of ALCL. It is a CD30 positive type of lymphoma in which mainly the breast implants are involved. Okay, mostly it occurs 1 decade, around 10 years after the implant. It is mostly unilateral. It is mostly ALK negative. As it is just involving the breast, as the name is suggesting, it will be a localized disease. That is why complete surgical excision can be done. If by chance, instead of the local site, it is involving the surrounding area also, it is disseminated, then we have to give CHOP or brentuximab-based therapy. This lymphoma, for MCQs, it is a very favorite of examiners. Okay, so you should remember all these lines. Okay, that it is a CD30 positive kind of a lymphoma. Mostly it occurs 1 decade after the implant. It is unilateral. It lacks the ALK gene. Then it is a localized disease. If it is localized, mostly what do? You do a surgical excision. And if it is disseminated, I'll give systemic chemotherapy like CHOP or brentuximab to the patient. Okay. So I think I have included this question in one of the quiz also. So this is the breast implant which is in place. Okay, and this on PET CT, you can see this FDG uptake. It is shining in the FDG or this FDG PET uptake. So this is evident lymphoma, breast implant associated lymphoma in a breast implant patient. Treatment, if it is localized, do a complete surgical excision, and if it is disseminated, then what we do, we give CHOP or brentuximab-based therapy to the patient. Okay.
It's the same, isn't it? If we instead of vincristine, we give brentuximab.
Yes, instead of, because if you give two drugs which are causing peripheral neuropathy, the patient will not be able to rise from the bed, right? You have to avoid two drugs which cause same, like you can, mostly what do you avoid? In antibiotics, I will not give amikacin to a patient. Mostly, if I am giving amphotericin to the patient, right? Because this can cause complete renal shutdown of the patient. I do avoid vancomycin in a patient in which I am giving amphotericin. So same way, two chemotherapeutic drugs with same side effects you have to avoid. Such severe peripheral neuropathy will occur if you give two drugs together. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Then coming to the third nodal T cell lymphoma and the most common T cell lymphoma, PTCL-NOS. As the name suggests, if it does not fit into any of the lymphomas, you label it as PTCL-NOS. Okay, so it is the most common of all the T cell lymphomas. It is 30% of all the T cell lymphomas and 4% of all the NHLs and 4% of all the NHLs. And this predominantly, as the name suggests, as the topic we are reading, it is a nodal lymphoma, so it will predominantly affect the nodes. It can also affect the extranodal sites. Okay, and these patients are usually 60 years of age, same, stage 3 and 4, and as it is not otherwise specified, it will have no characteristic immunophenotype. Okay, some may have CD4 expression, some may have CD8 expression, some will have both expressed, some will have none of these. Okay, sometimes it can be CD30 positive also. So no characteristic flow of finding, immunophenotype finding, and no characteristic genetic feature for this PTCL-NOS. The scoring system is not very important, but you should know that the prognostic index for PTCL, PIT, is one of the prognostic scoring in which they include apples is there, no? So they include age, they include performance status, and they include LDH. Okay. And a new thing, sometimes they may include in this, instead of the stage, the bone marrow involvement. Okay. So apples ka APL and bone marrow involvement. Okay, sometimes some scores may include the Ki-67 as well if it is more than equal to 80%. So another international prognostic scoring can, if we are not using specifically PTCL, we can use the Apple scoring as well, no problem. Okay. So Pre-treatment evaluation is same as all the lymphomas. I won't repeat it again. You have to get a CBC, LKFT, viral markers, PET-CT. You have to look at the FDG sites. PET-CT will help in the Lugano staging, whether it is stage 1, stage 2, 3, or 4. Then what is a confirmatory test? If it is a lymph node involvement, confirmatory test is excisional lymph node biopsy. Remember, FNAC is never a confirmatory test for lymphomas. Then if there is bone marrow involvement, it directly becomes a stage 4. Then as I'm planning to give anthracyclines to the patient, I should get an echo of the patient done. Then I have to do immunophenotyping to know which kind of lymphoma it is. And we have already read that for PTCL NOS, no characteristic IPT finding, that is immunophenotype finding, and no characteristic genetic finding is there. Okay. Then what is the treatment like? CHOP. So this table will tell us that T cell NHLs CHOP, B cell NHLs are CHOP. Okay. If sometimes it is CD30 positive, in a few cases, I can give brentuximab. Okay. And what they say is, in a relapsed refractory case, if the patient is transplant eligible, I do a autologous stem cell transplant. Now the next line is important, that what if the patient is transplant ineligible? The patient cannot be taken up for a stem cell transplant. What are there any FDA approved drugs in such relapsed refractory cases? Yes, there are 3 drugs which you should know of. Apart from brentuximab vedotin, if it is CD30 positive, pralatrexate, romidepsin, and belinostat. Romidepsin and belinostat are HDAC inhibitors, and pralatrexate is brother sister of methotrexate. Okay, so if it is a PTCL NOS, relapsed refractory, if the patient is transplant eligible, I give a salvage therapy followed by autologous transplant. If the patient is transplant ineligible, there are 3 FDA approved drugs: pralatrexate, romidepsin, and belinostat. Okay, so pralatrexate, same as methotrexate, is an antifolate drug. Romidepsin and belinostat are histone deacetylase inhibitors, that is HDAC inhibitors. Okay. Now coming to the next lymphoma, AITL. AITL is angioimmunoblastic T cell lymphoma. In angioimmunoblastic T cell lymphoma, the questions asked are that first, it arises from the CD4 positive kind of cells. Secondly, they'll ask you that what is the histology of AITL? So you should know that it has HEVs and FDCs. So it has arborizing high endothelial venules and expanded follicular dendritic cells in histology, which are quite characteristic of angioimmunoblastic T cell lymphoma. It arises from a CD4 positive T helper follicular cells. Okay, and it is commonly associated with AIHA, vasculitis, the autoimmune diseases basically, AIHA, vasculitis, polyarthritis, cold agglutinin disease, etc. Okay, and how do I manage AITL? How do I manage AITL? I give same as PTCL NOS if the patient, I give R-CHOP based therapy or R-CHOP based therapy if the patient is relapsed refractory. If the patient is relapsed refractory and is transplant eligible, I give a salvage therapy followed by transplant. And if the patient is transplant ineligible, and I can give any 3 of the newer drugs, pralatrexate, romidepsin, or belinostat. Okay. Any questions till now? Okay, so coming to the next group of T cell lymphomas, which are extranodal. In this, the most important one is extranodal NK T cell lymphoma, nasal type. The others are enteropathy associated T cell lymphomas and hepatosplenic T cell lymphomas. Okay, so in the extranodal T cell lymphomas, nasal type, what we have to remember are that these are angiodestructive infiltrates. They will invade the vessels and destroy the vessels and cause necrosis of the vessels. Okay, and they are commonly EBV positive. They are angiocentric, angiodestructive. They are EBV positive, commonly associated with deletion chromosome 6q. Okay, so what are the clinical features? They are very commonly seen in Chinese, Japanese, and these Asians, okay, mainly Southeast Asians. So more commonly seen in Asians. Mostly it is localized to the nose and it destroys the midline facial structure. Mostly it is localized to the midline facial structures, causing nasal obstruction, epistaxis, some ocular mass, or it may cause perforation of the palate. Okay, bone marrow involvement is seen in around 10% of the patients, and they can have a hemophagocytic syndrome like picture, or any NK cell lymphoma can have hemophagocytosis. Always remember this in MCQs. Okay. So what kind of presentations? These kind of presentations they can have. You should remember these pictures. Okay. Some ulcerated lesion on the nose, eye involvement. Okay. This is skin involvement and this is perforation of the palate, hard palate. So they are EBV associated. We should remember. So what do I do? Firstly, I'll do a nasal MRI because usually they are local. I'll do a nasal MRI. Then to know if they are involving other sites also, I may do a PET CT scan. Then as EBV is very commonly associated, I'll do a EBV DNA levels. Then classification is the same. I won't repeat it. Stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. Ann Arbor Lugano classification. You can divide it as per the presence of B symptoms as A and B as well. If there is a bulky disease more than 10 centimeters, it becomes, you should know it is a bulky disease. Now, what kind of treatment do we give in NK cell lymphoma? Here, what is important to know is that certain drugs cannot act in NK T cell lymphoma. What are the drugs? Anthracycline, cyclophosphamide. They have a very poor response. So CHOP-like therapy will not help. Those having cyclophosphamide, anthracycline will not help in these tumors. Why? Because they have a very high expression of multi-drug resistant P-glycoprotein. These lymphoma cells have a very high expression of MDR P-glycoprotein. So they have a poor response to anthracyclines and cyclophosphamide. Okay, so how do I treat the disease? If it is a localized disease, then what do? We give usually a combined modality therapy. That is, we combine chemotherapy with radiotherapy. So what kind of protocols do we use? You should just know the names of the drugs like VIDL, Gelox. We are not using cyclophosphamide and anthracycline. That you should be sure of. So what kind of drugs we can use? There are few drugs which can use. V is VP16, that is etoposide. I can give ifosfamide. I can give dexamethasone. L-asparaginase is very commonly used. Then gemcitabine-based protocols. Gelox, gemcitabine. L is L-asparagine. Ox is oxaliplatin, a platin drug. Okay, so VIDL, Gelox, DICE are the protocols which can be used in a localized disease. But mostly they will not be asked as questions. What will be asked is, which protocol do you use in advanced disease ENKL? So the name is SMILE protocol. You don't need to know the doses, but you should know the names. Names are steroids. S is for steroids. Dexamethasone. M is for methotrexate. I is for ifosfamide. L is for L-asparaginase. And E is for etoposide. Okay, so this is the SMILE protocol. Modified SMILE means instead of plain L-asparaginase, I am giving pegylated L-asparaginase. Okay, So they will ask you a question, extranodal NK T cell lymphoma, which therapy is common, which protocol is commonly used? You should know the SMILE protocol, steroids, methotrexate, ifosfamide, L-asparaginase and etoposide based protocol. Okay, this is what is important. And what is important is we should know that certain drugs will not act because of the multi-drug resistant P glycoprotein. We should know how this NK cell lymphoma present and what kind of associations does it have. Okay. And if the patient relapses, what you have to do is autologous transplant. If the patient relapses on autologous, I have to do an allogeneic transplant. Okay. This is the pink E prognostic scoring is used for, you should know, NK T cell lymphoma. Hopefully you don't need to know the constituents of the same, but pink E means that you are including the EBV DNA levels done by PCR. Okay, so pink E is the prognostic scoring used for NK T cell lymphoma, where E stands for the EBV DNA levels. Okay. Then aggressive NK cell leukemia means that this NK cell leukemia has entered into blood, bone marrow, everywhere, and wherever there is NK, I told you the patient will have HLH-like symptoms. So there will be pancytopenia, fever, rash, organomegaly, etc. Their ferritin will be high, triglycerides will be high, fibrinogen will be low, just like HLH, and their survivals are very, very poor. Okay, and as it is a NK cell leukemia, it is mostly EBV associated. Okay, so NK is associated with HLH mostly, NK is associated with EBV mostly. Okay, this you should remember. Then intestinal T cell lymphomas, not very important, but you should know that these intestinal T cell lymphomas mostly occur in the proximal jejunum, and they are or they may be associated with the celiac disease or malabsorption syndromes. Okay, that is why to prevent them we can give gluten-free diet to the patient, and if there is a perforation, fistula, etc., we have to do surgery of the patient. Otherwise, same as PTCL NOS, we do a autologous hematopoietic stem cell transplant in CR1. So if somebody asks you in PTCL NOS or in intestinal T cell lymphomas or in ALK negative ALCL, when do you do autologous hematopoietic stem cell transplant? Mostly they'll ask you PTCL NOS. Your answer should be in CR1 once the patient goes into complete remission because they have a very poor prognosis. Okay. Now coming to the next lymphoma, which is the hepatosplenic T cell lymphoma. You should know the age group. It is 35 years. Okay. Then hepatosplenic T cell lymphoma is commonly associated with chronic immunosuppression. It can occur post-transplant. Then this question you should remember that it is associated with isochromosome 7q. Isochromosome 7q. Then you should know that instead of alpha beta type, it is mostly gamma delta type. Okay. And what kind of presentation does it have? It infiltrates the red pulp and causes atrophy of the white pulp. So it has a sinusoidal infiltration. It infiltrates the red pulp and causes atrophy of the white pulp. As the name suggests, it will present with hepatomegaly, it will present with splenomegaly and with cytopenias. Lymphadenopathy is rare. Okay, no standard therapy has been devised for hematosplenic T cell lymphoma and it has a very poor survival. So HSTCL, we should remember, occurs in around 35 years of age males. It is associated commonly with isochromosome 7q. It is mostly gamma delta type. What kind of involvement is there on histopathology? Sinusoidal infiltration in the spleen. Red pulp will have infiltration, white pulp will be atrophic, and it will have hepatosplenomegaly majorly, no lymphadenopathy, and treatment is still not clear. Okay. This is a picture of subcutaneous panniculitis T cell lymphoma. Subcutaneous panniculitis caused by mature T cells. I don't think this is very important. This is okay. Okay, so in the cutaneous T cell lymphomas, we should know majorly about mycosis fungoides. Okay, so mycosis fungoides, a very commonly asked question is that it is a primary cutaneous T cell lymphoma. Does it have epidermotrophism? Yes, it has epidermotrophism. This is an important question. Then what is the cell of origin? CD4 positive T cells. Okay. And how does it present? It can present as an initially pruritic rash, then psoriasis like eczematous lesion, then plaques, then tumors, etc. Okay. Then what all does it express? It can express CCR4. What drug we read about CCR4 recently in ATLL? Anti-CCR4, mogamulizumab. Yeah, mulizumab, anti-CCR4. These are rare questions, but nowadays examiners are very fond of asking these monoclonal antibodies. None of them have used or seen these drugs, but I don't know why they ask these in theoretical questions always. So in mycosis fungoides, we should know that it is the most common cutaneous T cell lymphoma. Mostly these patients have an indolent course and sometimes they may have advanced stages in which they will involve the lymph nodes. Apart from the skin, they will involve the lymph nodes, the blood, etc. Okay. Then what is Sézary syndrome? Sézary syndrome is less than 5% rare of cutaneous lymphomas, in which what happens is that these atypical Sézary cells become in the peripheral blood, okay, in the peripheral blood become more than 1000 per microliter, more than 1000 per microliter. And when I do a flow cytometry of these cells, what do I find? That they are CD4 positive, CD7 negative, or CD4 positive and CD26 negative cells. And where do they arise from? They arise from thymic memory T cells. So you can see that the origin of mycosis fungoides is different from the origin of Sézary syndrome. So mycosis fungoides histologically, sometimes we think that mycosis fungoides, when it comes into the blood, it is Sézary. No, both of them are cutaneous cell lymphomas, but mycosis fungoides has a different cell of origin. Sézary has a different cell of origin. Mycosis fungoides, the cell of origin is the skin homing CD4 positive T cells. Whereas for Sézary syndrome, the cells of origin is thymic memory T cells. Okay. And when do we call a patient that the patient is having Sézary syndrome? When the abnormal T cells in the peripheral blood become more than 1000. If I do a flow, they are CD4 positive 7 negative, CD4 positive 26 negative. Okay. So majorly you have to remember CD4 positivity in these cells. So these are the patchy stages of mycosis fungoides and these are the plaque-like stages. Here the patient has developed tumor-like stage. Okay, and this is complete erythroderma. This is only in which hair follicles are involved, area around hair follicles are involved, called as folliculotrophic. So on immunophenotyping, majorly we have to know that they are mostly CD4 positive, CD8 negative. Okay, then we should know that they are mycosis fungoides is CCR4 positive. Why is it important? Because we have a monoclonal antibody available against it. Okay, on histopathology, a common finding which two findings we should know in mycosis fungoides are Potterier's microabscess and cerebriform nuclei in the mononuclear cells. We should remember these two histopathology findings. They will say Potterier's microabscess is commonly associated with ELCLA, ITL, mycosis fungoides. You should know it is commonly associated with mycosis fungoides. Cerebriform nuclei is associated with mycosis fungoides. Flower-like cell is associated with flower-like nuclei or cell is associated with
Adult T-cell leukemia.
adult T-cell leukemia, lymphoma. It is also associated with hypercalcemia. It is also associated with opportunistic infections like strongyloids. It is also associated with lytic lesions. Okay. Sézary syndrome, as we know, it is the last stage of these cutaneous T-cell lymphomas. So it is a T4, that is erythroderma. More than 80% of the body surface area is involved. So clinically, the patient will have erythroderma. If I do a peripheral blood analysis, more than 1,000 Sézary cells will be present. So how do I recognize a Sézary cell? What kind of nucleus will it have?
Cerebriform.
Cerebriform nucleus. And there are some specific T cell rearrangements in the Sézary cells. They are CD4 positive, CD7 negative. They are CD4 positive, CD26 negative most of the times. Okay, so these circulating Sézary cells, they have a cerebriform kind of a nuclei, a convoluted kind of a nuclei. So this staging, I don't think is very important. We should know T41 erythroderma was more than 80% of the body surface area involvement. We should know B2 variant, B2 in the blood. In the TNM classification, B2 meant that more than 1,000 Sézary cells are present. They are CD4 positive, CD26 negative, CD4 positive, CD7 negative on flow cytometry. Okay. So according to the TNM classification, they'll tell you whether it is just skin type or whether it is disseminated to all the, if it is present in the blood, then it is disseminated. So accordingly, you will decide the therapy, whether you will give just radiation therapy or chemotherapy, or you will give phototherapy to the patient. So in skin directed therapy, you should know we can give steroids, we can give UV radiation, some topical chemotherapy is there, and one topical bexarotene is there. Or total skin electron beam therapy can be given to these patients. I don't know, rarely questions are asked from this topic, but it is a very huge topic. Okay, so skin directed therapies, you should at least know the names. Okay, so locally I can give steroids to the patient, I can give local chemotherapy like Carmazine to the patient, then topical retinoids. This you should remember, topical retinoids like bexarotene can be given, or some phototherapy, UVA therapy can be given to the patient. In systemic therapy, this bexarotene can be given orally. Then there is one extracorporeal photopheresis which can be done. Then histone deacetylase inhibitors, just like other T-cell lymphomas, romidepsin, belinostat. Alemtuzumab can be tried. Systemic therapies like R-CHOP can be, CHOP can be tried, or transplant can be tried for the patient. There is another drug for mycosis fungoides. You should know the name, that is denileukin diphthitoxin. It is a recombinant fusion protein of IL-2 and diphtheria toxin. God only knows how will we remember all these drugs, but you should have an idea. Denileukin diphthitoxin, recombinant fusion protein of IL-2 and diphtheria toxin. Okay, so in systemic therapies, we should know we can use bexarotene, which is an oral retinoid. Then brentuximab if by chance CD30 positive. Then extracorporeal photopheresis can be used. Then mogamulizumab, I've already told you, CCR4 inhibitor. Then romidepsin, belinostat, vorinostat, these are all HDAC inhibitors which can be used. Okay, then other drugs like gemcitabine can be used, liposomal dox can be used, cyclophosphamide-based therapies can be used. So, extracorporeal photopheresis can be used in the treatment of cutaneous T-cell lymphomas like mycosis fungoides. Where else can we use extracorporeal photopheresis? Where else can we use extracorporeal photopheresis? It can be used in cases of chronic skin GVHD. Okay, chronic skin GVHD. So in hematology, we know of two uses of extracorporeal photopheresis. First is cutaneous T-cell lymphomas, systemic type, and second is chronic GVHD. Do not FDA approved. Okay, so we are through with T-cell lymphomas. Now I'll tell you about some important lymphomas which are rare, but questions are asked from these lymphomas. So first one is, now we have completed the topic of T-cell lymphomas. Now I'm telling you about some miscellaneous lymphomas which are left, common lymphomas. Okay, so hairy cell leukemia, HCL. It is a rare lymphoma. What you have to remember in this lymphoma is, firstly, it is a B-cell lymphoma. Okay. Then we have to remember in hairy cell lymphoma, what kind of a presentation does the patient have? The patient will present with pancytopenia along with splenomegaly. Okay. Pancytopenia along with splenomegaly, lymphadenopathy, these symptoms are very rare. Okay. This is what you have to remember. Pancytopenia with splenomegaly, one of the causes is hairy cell leukemia. Okay. Then we have to remember that in the CBC, there'll be pancytopenia, but specifically what we'll see, there'll be monocytopenia in almost 80% of patients. So monocytopenia is quite characteristic of hairy cell leukemia. Now they'll ask you which mutation is commonly associated with hairy cell. 100 times this question has been asked. BRAF V600E mutation. Okay, what mutation is associated with hairy cell leukemia? BRAF V600E mutation. Okay, so as the name suggests, what kind of cells are there in hairy cell leukemia? In the peripheral blood, sometimes cells can be seen with hairy projections. Okay, so hairy cells, hair-like projections. Okay, in the bone marrow, what is the appearance in the bone marrow? Fried egg appearance. 100 times these questions have been asked. Fried egg appearance. What is the flow cytometry finding of hairy cell? They are CD19, 20, 11C, 25, 103, 123, and 200 positive. So CD19, 20, 11C, 25, 103, 123, and 200 positive. You have to rectify this. Okay. In the bone marrow, they have a fried egg appearance. In the peripheral blood, hairy cells can be seen. Then if I apply a stain for CD20 in the bone marrow, CD20 will be positive. Others what are positive are annexin A1, DBA44, and what mutation analysis I can do? BRAF V600E. And in the spleen, mostly red pulp infiltration is there. This is important. In the spleen, mostly red pulp infiltration is there. So hairy cell leukemia, a B-cell lymphoma, which is rare. Presentation is mostly pancytopenia with splenomegaly. In the CBC, there is pancytopenia. Very characteristically, monocytopenia is present. In the peripheral smear, if the hairy cells are seen in the peripheral smear, there will be cells with hairy projections. In the bone marrow, what kind of histological pathology finding is there? There is a fried egg appearance. If I do a flow, there will be CD20, 11C, 25, 103, 123, and 200 positive. 25, 103, 123, 200 positive. Okay. What kind of markers are positive in the marrow? CD20, annexin A1, DBA44, mutation specific BRAF V600E, and it has in the spleen red pulp infiltration. Okay. Now, what they can ask you that hairy cell are of two types: classical hairy cell and a variant hairy cell leukemia. classical and variant hairy cell leukemia. So classical, we have already read. It will have pancytopenia, monocytopenia. Okay, then the markers are CD20, 11C, 25, 103, 123, 200 positive, DBA44, annexin A1, BRAF V600E positive, TRAP is also positive. Okay, what happens in hairy cell leukemia variant? Instead of pancytopenia, they present with leukocytosis. Monocytopenia is absent. Okay. One thing, sorry, I forgot to tell you here that in this, if I do a bone marrow aspirate, it will be a dry tear because they have bone marrow fibrosis. They have a fried egg appearance on marrow. Here, nothing such thing is seen. Then you should remember what all markers are negative. They are CD25, 123 and 200 negative. They are BRAF V600E negative. They are TRAP negative. Okay, so they have leukocytosis, absent monocytopenia, CD25, 123 and 200 negative, BRAF V600 negative, TRAP negative. This is very important. This is very, very important. This difference you should know. Okay, variant hairy cell leukemia. Okay, so these are the hairy cells. Hair-like projections are seen. Okay, the hairy cells. So, in the hairy cell leukemia, all the leukemias do not need treatment. If they have significant cytopenia, significant organomegaly, significant constitutional symptoms, then only these patients are treated. Then they'll ask you, what is the first line treatment of a hairy cell leukemia patient? Your answer is cladribine, cladribine, and cladribine. Okay, they are nucleoside analogs. Your answer is cladribine. Another drug which is used is pentostatin. Okay, what if a pregnant female has hairy cell leukemia? I will give interferon. You should remember things in pregnancy. Okay, if a CML pregnant, use interferon. If a ET PV is pregnant, use interferon. Nowadays, many questions come. They'll give you a big case scenario. Finally, they'll tell you that that female is pregnant. How will you treat that CML? How will you treat that ET? How will you treat that PV or hairy cell? Interferon is the treatment till the pregnancy is over. Okay. Now, what is the second line therapy? Second line therapy is that along with this cladribine or pentostatin, I can add rituximab. I can add rituximab. Okay. And then why were we reading BRAF again and again and again? Because we have a drug against BRAF. BRAF inhibitors like vemurafenib or dabrafenib. Okay, so these are the drugs against BRAF inhibitors, vemurafenib or dabrafenib. There is a monoclonal antibody as well which can be used, moxetumomab pseudotox. God only knows how you remember. Okay. So if the patient is BRAF positive and relapsed refractory, give BRAF inhibitors. If the patient is BRAF negative, you can give monoclonal antibody moxetumomab pseudotox. How do we treat a hairy cell variant? That along with cladribine, I add rituximab. Okay, frontline only. So how do I treat a hairy cell leukemia? I give purine nucleoside analog based therapy, that is cladribine. Dose of cladribine, they'll ask you question. Okay, dose is important. I'll tell you just one dose, no need to remember others. Hopefully they won't ask you. It is a continuous IV infusion at 0.1 mg per kg per day. Continuous infusion for 7 days is the dose of cladribine commonly used. Okay. This day has been asked multiple times in MCQs. So purine nucleoside analog, cladribine, 0.1 mg per kg per day for 7 days. Such a rare tumor, and so many questions are asked from this. Now the next tumor is the Castleman disease. Castleman disease. Castleman disease is of three types: unicentric Castleman disease, then second is multicentric Castleman disease. It can be either HHV8 positive or HHV8 negative. Okay. So unicentric Castleman disease, as the name suggests, it involves a single lymph node area. We should know the histopathological finding: hyaline vascular type. Hyaline vascular type. Okay. And what is the management? Surgical resection of the involved node. Most of the times they involve a single group of lymph node. On histopathology, mostly they are hyaline vascular. Management is surgical resection. If not resectable, which is a rare finding, you can give rituximab or cyclosporine. So what is the presentation like? What is the presentation like? Hyaline vascular like. There is a follicle and some vessel is penetrating it. So it is called as a lollipop kind of appearance. A lollipop kind of a appearance, and this concentric ringing is called as an onion skin peel appearance. Okay, it is called as an onion skinning appearance, and this is hyaline vascular or lollipop appearance. So you should remember this histopathological finding. Then coming to multicentric Castleman's disease, as the name suggests, in multicentric Castleman disease, multiple lymph node sites will be involved. It can be either HHV8 positive or it can be HHV8 negative. So if it is a HHV8 positive mixed connective tissue disease, it is, HHV8 positive multicentric Castleman's disease. It is commonly seen in association with HIV. Okay, commonly seen in association with HIV. In adult males, on histopathology, it has a plasmablastic morphology. How will it present? It will have cytopenias, lots of nodes or organ involvement, and a huge cytokine storm because of the IL-6 cytokine storm, and IL-6 you must be knowing because of the COVID. Okay, so the patient will have less of albumin, more of hypergamma-globulinemia, more of CRP, more of ESR. Okay, so how do we treat these patients? Usually rituximab is the treatment for them, and if they are HIV positive, antiretroviral therapy. For HHV8, we can give ganciclovir. So mostly rituximab is the therapy. Okay, then comes the HHV8 negative mixed connective tissue diseases. HHV8 negative MCT, you should know they can be associated with the POEMS syndrome. And how do we treat it? With, as it is IL-6 associated, how do I treat it? With IL-6 receptor inhibitors, tocilizumab, very commonly was used in treating COVID, and anti-IL-6 drug, ciltuximab. This is directly anti-IL-6, this is against IL-6 receptor. Tocilizumab and ciltuximab are the drugs used in HHV8 negative multicentric Castleman's disease, which is commonly associated with POEMS syndrome. Then you should know what is Tafro syndrome. Tafro syndrome is associated with HHV8 negative or idiopathic mixed Castleman's disease, multicentric Castleman disease, and Tafro is thrombocytopenia, anasarca, fibrosis, renal dysfunction, and organomegaly is the Tafro syndrome. Okay, this table we have already read. What all viruses are associated with what all neoplasms. Then primary fusion lymphomas, we should know that they are HHV8 associated. Any question you want to ask? Okay. So primary fusion lymphomas, a single question comes half of the times. Primary fusion lymphomas are HHV8 associated. They have a very poor prognosis. Then other tumor is the plasma plasmablastic lymphoma, which is a highly aggressive tumor associated with HIV and carries a very poor prognosis. Plasmablastic lymphoma. These plasmablasts are neither B cells nor they are plasma cells. Okay, they are somewhere between the B cells and somewhere they are neither B cells nor plasma cells. So they are CD38 and 138 positive, just like plasma cells, but they do not carry, or the CD20 is slightly reduced. Plasma cells are CD20 negative, but here the CD20 expression is slightly reduced. Okay. Now coming to the next tumor, that is post-transplant lymphoproliferative disorder. As it is a post-transplant lymphoproliferative disorder, what does it mean? That because in these tumors or after transplant, we are giving chronic immunosuppression to the patient. Okay, we are giving chronic immunosuppression to the patient. So what happens is that in the absence of the T cell surveillance, the T cells have been suppressed by this chronic immunosuppression. So what happens is that the B cells which were normally carrying these latent EBV becomes prominent, they start proliferating. Okay, so post-transplant lymphoproliferative disorder, what happens is that these tumors are usually donor-derived, that is, it occurs because of the donor graft which was given. Okay, the most common tumor in PTLD is DLBCL. This can be asked as a question. Okay, then they are donor derived, can be asked as a question. Then why does it occur? Because B cell carrying the EBV, so it is associated with EBV, proliferate in the absence of T cell surveillance. Okay, so we should know they are EBV associated, and how do we treat it? You should know just one line, that firstly, the immunosuppression should be tapered, antivirals against EBV can be given, and weekly rituximab can be given. If this does not suffice, then R-CHOP-like chemotherapy may be required. So the first and foremost thing is to taper immunosuppression, give some anti-EBV drug, give weekly rituximab, and if it does not suffice, then I may need R-CHOP-based chemotherapy. Okay, then BPLL is not very important. We should know Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia. What is Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia? In this, there is excess of immunoglobulin IgM. Excess of immunoglobulin IgM. So what happens in this disease is, this is a low-grade lymphoma in which the bone marrow gets infiltrated by the lymphoplasmacytic cells which secrete immunoglobulin M. Okay, it occurs in elderly, more common in males, same. What kind of questions they will ask you is, in Waldenstrom's, it's very commonly associated with which mutation? Waldenstrom's is commonly associated with which mutation? So you should know that Waldenstrom's is commonly associated with MYD88 MYD88 mutation. MYD88 mutation. Okay, it is associated but not specific of Waldenstrom's. So Waldenstrom's is commonly associated with MYD88 mutation. It is also called as a lymphoplasmacytic lymphoma, which has a bone marrow involvement and a IgM type of monoclonal gammopathy. So Waldenstrom's is a lymphoplasmacytic lymphoma, which has a bone marrow involvement and an IgM type of monoclonal gammopathy. These cells are CD20 positive. So what is the criteria for diagnosing a Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia? That I have a monoclonal M band of IgM. Bone marrow is infiltrated by plasmacytoid cells, and These cells are CD20 positive, and other markers of B cells like CD19, 23, 5, 10 can also be expressed. Okay, what are the clinical features like? Clinical features in this disease are the patient can have anemia, the patient can have lymphadenopathy, the patient can have B symptoms, and IgM can cause hyperviscosity like symptoms. So, in the hyperviscosity like symptoms, the patient can have blurring of vision, headache, the patient can have bleeding. Compared to multiple myeloma, they will not have any lytic lesions. Then these patients can present with cold agglutinin disease. They can present with sensory or motor neuropathy, which is mainly because of anti-myelin associated glycoprotein antibodies. So what is the clinical feature of Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia? These patients can present with anemia. These patients can present with B symptoms or constitutional symptoms, organomegaly, and symptoms of hyperviscosity like epistaxis, blurring of vision, headache, tinnitus, etc. Like multiple myeloma, they do not have lytic lesions. They can present with cold agglutinin disease. They can present with peripheral neuropathy because of the anti-myelin associated glycoprotein, anti-MAG antibodies. Okay, then they can present with Coombs positive autoimmune hemolytic anemia. They can be associated with amyloid. They can be associated with cryoglobulinemia. And when do we say hyperviscosity? When the viscosity is more than 4 centipoise. Symptoms come if the viscosity is more than 6. Okay. So this is a fundus finding. Dilated tortuous retinal veins with a sausage-like appearance. Okay. Then there is a international prognostic scoring system for Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia, in which there is age, hemoglobin, platelet count, beta 2 microglobulin, and the serum IgM levels. Okay, age, hemoglobin, platelet count, beta 2 microglobulin more than 3, and serum IgM or the M band of IgM more than 7 grams per deciliter. Okay. Then this I told you when we were reading MGUS also, what is Schindler syndrome, IgM monoclonal gammopathy along with urticaria is Schindler syndrome. What is Bing-Meal syndrome, neurological deficit, CNS defect along with IgM monoclonal gammopathy. So how do these patients present? They can present with features of hyperviscosity, with cryoglobulinemia, Schindler syndrome, peripheral neuropathy, amyloid, cold autoimmune hemolytic anemia, Coombs positive. Okay. And they can be associated with hepatitis C as well. And mid-88, this you should know. It is commonly associated with MYD88L265P. This you should remember. The mutation associated with commonly associated with, Waldenstrom's macropathy. All Waldenstrom's, as it is a low-grade lymphoma, just like hairy cell, do not require treatment. Indications will be if there is organomegaly, severe cytopenia, severe B symptoms, cryoglobulinemia, cold agglutinin disease, severe neuropathy, etc. Okay. Then they will ask you, as it is a hyperviscosity syndrome, will you do plasmapheresis in the patient? I will say yes, I will do plasmapheresis in the patient if the patient is having symptomatic hyperviscosity. Symptomatic hyperviscosity. Okay, and before giving any rituximab based regimen, if the patient is symptomatic for hyperviscosity, I should do a plasmapheresis because What does rituximab do? Rituximab initially can cause IgM flare-up. IgM increases initially on giving rituximab-based therapy. So how do we treat Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia? You should know the names of the drugs. How do we treat it? Either I do plasmapheresis. If the patient is having symptomatic hyperviscosity, then I can give BR, bendamustine, rituximab, just like other low-grade lymphomas like follicular lymphoma. Then I can give BDR, that is bortezomib plus lenalidomide plus rituximab. Then what else I can do? I can give ibrutinib to the patient. Okay, I can give ibrutinib to the patient. So plasmapheresis, if the patient is having symptomatic hyperviscosity, bendamustine rituximab can be given, BRD can be given, ibrutinib can be given. What was ibrutinib? What was ibrutinib? What was ibrutinib?
Tyrosine kinase.
Bruton tyrosine
Proton
kinase.
tyrosine.
Okay, so what do we do if we diagnose a case of Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia and that patient has indication for treatment like significant cytopenias, B symptoms, organomegaly, cryoglobulinemia, cold agglutinin disease, neuropathy? What do I give? In the first cycle, I will avoid rituximab if the IgM levels or the M band is more than 4 grams per deciliter. Why? Because with rituximab, there is risk of IgM flare, that suddenly IgM will increase, cause more of hyperviscosity. So initially I have to decrease the tumor load. Okay. This can be asked in a question that rituximab in Waldenstrom's, if they will give you a case scenario in which the IgM is 7 or 8, they'll ask you, do you give BR or just B or just bortezomib or just ibrutinib? Your answer should be, I should avoid it rituximab-based therapy. So the therapy in which rituximab is missing, you will give that therapy to avoid IgM flare in that patient. Okay. So the preferred treatment is that I give BR-based therapy, bortezomib-based therapy, or sometimes rituximab alone, or sometimes ibrutinib. The only FDA-approved drug for Waldenstrom's is, we should know, ibrutinib. Okay, which has been recently approved. The only FDA-approved drug is ibrutinib. Others are being tried, but you should know basically these drugs. These are important: BR, BDR, ibrutinib. Okay. Any questions? Any questions in low-grade lymphomas, T-cell lymphomas, Hodgkin's, NHLs, anything? If no, I've completed the topic of lymphomas in the Harrison-based class. Thank you for the patient hearing.
Thank you, ma'am. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.